Well, hello there, treasured saints. I hope you guys are doing well. I've been thinking about you a lot, missing you, praying for you. God is with us. He walks with us through these days, these times. And what a day to be a Christian. What a time for the church to rise up and be the church. This is a time of testing. It's a time of trusting. It's both these things. And I hope that we all will pass the test and we will learn to trust more. By the way, I am so blessed by the way you guys have rallied together and encouraged each other in your prayers. We really do need each other. And I was so deeply appreciative when I read through how you guys shared your prayer requests and then supported each other so beautifully. And we'll be doing that about every other week. There will be one week where we'll do it twice in a row. I think it is, but for the most part, it'll be every other. But feel free to share a prayer request at any time. Maybe what I'll do is put up just a generic prayer request thing so people can see it. Anyway, today we're going to be looking at small, strong congregations and congregational family systems. I'm going to just do a brief teaching on that. Some of the points on the strong, small congregations you're going to want to know for the test. And so you want to take notes on that, just have it accessible for wherever when the time comes to take the test, you'll be able to pull it back up and give it back to me, okay? So, there are a lot of small churches. I mean, we think of church and church leadership, and you think of churches like New Spring and maybe Alive. But the reality is that most churches are less than 100 people. I just took a look at the Wesleyans, for instance. Out of 1,600 Wesleyan churches in America, just this year's report, I just looked at it, there are only 300 of those that are more than 150. And the median church is like 58 people. Like, to take the bottom and the top and go all the way down to the middle, it's about 58 people. I think it is. I mean, it's just, so that's kind of normal. A lot of times people think of a church of 58 as really small, but it's not. It's not. That's kind of an average size Wesleyan church. So the question, though, isn't whether church is small or not. It's whether it's strong. Is it strong and small? Like, there are weak, big churches. In fact, some of the weak, big churches are going to fall apart during this crisis. And so will some weak, small churches, but strong, small congregations are going to thrive in a time. In fact, this kind of environment is set for a strong, small congregation. So I'm going to share it in just a second if I can figure out how to, oh, here it is, screen share. And we're going to talk about these things. You'll get an idea of what I'm talking about here. All righty, let's see. Oh, there we go. Strong, small congregations and family congregational systems. All righty. Oh. Well, maybe not. Oh, there we go. There's this guy, his name is Kennon Callahan, Kennon, who wrote on this, and he studied small congregations, and he said, what is the difference between a small, strong congregation and a small, weak congregation? Like, it seems like there are a lot of really crummy small churches, but there are a few that are fabulously wonderful. What's the difference? And he said that there are like 8 main things, the 8 biggies. This is what I want you to write down. Jot this down because this is going to come back. You're going to want this for the final exam, all right? So here they are: mission and service, compassion and shepherding, community and belonging, self-reliance and self-sufficiency, worship and hope, leaders and team, just enough space and facilities, and giving and generosity. These are the things that small churches can do really well. They don't always. In fact, a lot of times they mess up on them. But they can do them really well. Some of these are tailor-made for a small church, like compassion and shepherding, like community and belonging. Small churches are nimble. When I only had 29 members, man, we were able to just change things and do things right on the spur of the moment. Like we voted, we went to 2 services when we filled up one Sunday, I had too many people. We went to two services in one moment of time. We just quickly made the decision, and the very next Sunday had two services. When our church got bigger, we had boards and committees and teams and all that kind of stuff. And so it was a lot harder to make quick on the dime decisions. Small churches are a lot more nimble. So, and like with mission, you're able to just really harness everybody. One thing I found when my church was small, everybody participated in the mission together. Like if we had a church work day, almost everybody showed up. When our church grew big, hardly anybody came to the work day because they thought somebody else was going to do it. And the small churches are really generous too. Like if you take a look at per capita giving between large churches and small churches, except for a few very wealthy mega churches, small churches outpace the large churches by a lot in generosity. They really do. Like the top per capita mission giving churches in America are small churches. And a lot of times they give more to missions internationally than they actually spend on themselves. It's a pretty amazing thing. Well, anyway, these 8 things: mission and service, compassion and shepherding, community and belonging, self-reliance and self-sufficiency, worship and hope, leaders and team, just enough space and facilities, giving and generosity. And as these things shift and change, like for instance, when you grow to capacity in a church, like I think you remember before when we talked about this, 80% is full. And actually in a small community, it's more like 70% is full. And then you got to do something. You have to either have 2 services or 3 services or have another campus or do something or build a new building. You got to do something to have just enough space. And you don't need to build too much or way more than you need. A lot of churches get themselves into trouble doing that. This like the church that bought a shopping mall in North Carolina and just about went bankrupt, and it was crazy. But I mean, that seemed like a good idea at the time, but it wasn't. It was a bad idea. They bought way too much space and facilities. Self-reliance and self-sufficiency, like small churches are really good. They're good at figuring things out. Like they don't need something slick or glossy. In fact, up in our small town in Hayward, people were suspicious of slick and glossy. If I tried to give them some slick and glossy type of campaign to raise money or something, they would have laughed at me. So we just kind of did it by the seat of our pants on low budget, and it always worked. It worked great. We raised, well, millions over the years of dollars, just in low budget vision and mission, and saying, well, let's go make a difference in the world. And people rallied to the cause. They rallied together. As far as the worship side of things in a small church, of course, worship is not going to be slick and glossy either. But one thing I wrote in one of my articles that made it in Christianity Today was when you minister in a small place, like a small town particularly, you don't have to be very good to be spectacular. I'll put a link to that article about being a big fish in a small pond. I'll stick that into the assignment. You don't have to read it for any points or anything, just for fun. I'll share that article with you. It received an award for a humorous category in Christian writing, and so that was my only award ever as an author. Anyway, small, strong congregation. Now here's what Callahan says. You pick one of these things, like one of these things right there, one of these things, and you focus on that one. So let's say that you go into a place like Dylan and Kylie, remember them? You go into a place and you say, okay, what are we good at? Well, we're good at compassion and shepherd. Okay, well, let's just really focus on that then. And how can we be the world's best, a class act in compassion and shepherding? And then you just put all your eggs in the compassion and shepherding basket and just major on that, hammer on that, hammer on that. And then you just get better and better and better at that. And then you add another one the next year. So here's what he said. Here's what Callahan said. Here's how you do it, right? You claim your strength. You take the one, you expand on that one thing, and then you say, okay, what's my next one? what's my next one of the 8? What's my next one? Let's see. I'll take leaders and team. I'm going to develop a really good team. And all you got to have is one. I had one. I called him Steve because that was his name. And Steve was my team. And he was my best friend and my partner in crime. And he's still my best friend. And we just, every change we ever made, every idea we ever had, Steve and I came up with them together. So you add one new strength and you build on that. And then you keep going until you have 5 of these 8 that you feel you got them at like at least a B minus. Okay, you can get D minuses on 3 of the 5 and still have a wonderfully strong small congregation, right? But you gotta have 5 to make it strong. And so that's the goal. You start with 1, then you go to 2, then you go to 3 to 4 to 5. And that's the way you build a small church and you give it new strength, vitality, and life. Now I want to talk about congregational family systems. Some of you guys were in my caregiving class and we talked about family systems sort of when we talked about the family sculpts and about family roles and dynamics and differentiation and those kinds of things. If you were in that class, you remember some of that. Well, we're going to be looking at family systems, congregational systems. And the reason why is because a congregation operates as a family. It's not just an organization, it's an organism. It really is a family. In fact, churches often call themselves a church family. And we did that whenever we sent flowers to somebody who, like when they died for their family, we would say from the Hayward Wesleyan Church family, because we wanted them to know that we're a family and we're in this thing together. And a family has roles and they have functions in a family. And there are dysfunctional families, and dysfunctional families can make each other crazy. And then there are functional families and positive family roles, and that's a healthy and good thing. So here's what we want to do. There's this guy named Dr. Murray Brown, who is like the guy that wrote the most about family system theory. And so I'm in the assignment for this week. I've got a video I want you to watch. It's just a few minutes. It's like maybe 7 minutes long or something. And it's about family system theory with Dr. Murray Brown. It's about the roles that people play in a family. And I want you to think while you're watching that movie, how does this fit in a church family? How does this fit relationally in a church situation, right? Not just in my personal family, but in our family of families, if you will. So what I'm going to have you do is let me go back just for a sec. There's the video with Dr. Bowen, and then there are some articles too that I put in there. I think I have maybe 4 articles. They're not that long, they're pretty short, but these articles talk about churches as family systems, okay? And how do churches operate? Some of them actually take Bowen's theories and they apply it straight on to church. And there are others that are a little more loosey-goosey. And there's one in particular that I would like for you to look at, and I think it's called Ministry Today or something like that. You'll see it. It's one of those articles, and it has some really, really good stuff. So, whoops, hang on. What I'm gonna come back to this in just a sec. That particular article talks about restructuring the family system. Let's say that let's say things are just kind of messed up, and you have like a church family that's full of dysfunction, and they're all messed up. They're inbred and they're ingrown. They're negative. They're not winning anybody to Christ. They're a bunch of pew potatoes. They all want to be the boss, and they're not willing to reach the lost. Well, what do you do in a situation like that? And this particular article, the Ministry Matters, I think is the name of it. You'll find it. It's one of the ones you're going to read. Basically, it says here's how you restructure the system. There are 4 strategies: affiliation, unbalancing tactics, marking boundaries, and joining. And affiliation means that you get on the good side of the power broker. Whoever the power broker is, you want to find what's good about that person and what you can affirm in that person. And then you go straight to that and you join them. You try to connect up with them, and you affirm them. You lift them up, and you say, hey, I'm with you. I'm on your side. Let's find what we can agree on, and then let's give it to that. Now, there are some people you can't, and if that's the case, if you can't find anybody in your church that you can affiliate with, then you might as well call U-Haul, because you need somebody with you. You can't do this all alone. You need somebody on your team. Steve was that for me. He was my affiliate. And so the two of us, then we could tackle anything. We had all kinds of obstacles and people that criticized and all kinds of negativity, but we just when I had Steve, I had what I needed. Unbalancing tactics is when things are just sort of like normal in a congregation, normally dysfunctional, all right? And everybody's lazy, nobody's reached anybody, no baptisms in years, and they're just sitting around, the church is falling down, nothing's happening. But you're coming in as the pastor and you got to make something happen. Well, if you just sit around waiting for something to happen, it's not going to happen. You got to do something. And the way to do that is you unbalance it. You upset the fruit basket. So like one thing that we did, we outgrew our church building. So what we did was we rented the school, and we said, we're not going to have church at our church anymore. And so for like months, we ended up going over to the schoolhouse and having church, and that unbalanced people. It really threw them off. Now, we could get away with that because we had 3 services on Sunday and 1 on Saturday night that was overflowing, more than 100% full in all 4 services. So everybody kind of breathed a sigh of relief when we went back to 1 service at the high school for a little while. But just doing something like that throws everything off kilter. Like when we added drums, that's the first time that anybody in that town had drums in a worship service. That was an unbalancing tactic, but it worked for us. It shook people up, made some people mad, and it threw the comfort zone off balance. Sometimes the budget can do that too, where like one time we voted to double our budget in 1 year. and there was no way we'd be able to accomplish that, humanly speaking. And so we ended up making 2 budgets. We had a faith budget, and then we had a no faith budget. And we said, which one are we going to do? And we went for the faith budget, and God met the need. He took care of it. He completely supplied every bit of it. Marking boundaries is where we just set our territory. We say, no, no, okay, you guys might have always done it this way. Like you might have always sat in that pew, but you don't have the right to yell at somebody, a visitor, if they come in, they sit in your pew. You know, you mark a boundary. You can say, you can put your foot down. You don't have to be a doormat in this stuff. And sometimes you need to actually draw a line in the sand to make a change. And like we did that with our PA system. We had to change our PA system, made a few people mad. And when we started small groups, made people mad. When I started a youth group, it made people mad. But we said, no, we're going to do this. We're going to mark the boundary. We're going to make this thing happen. And then lastly is joining. And what I mean by that is actually joining with them. It isn't like being the pastor and I'm aloof and I'm over here and they're over here and oh, I'm up, you know, it's like I'm going to be one of them. So like what I did, I'd never fished, but I started fishing when I went to Hayward. I ended up writing a book about fishing. I didn't hunt either, and I'm a terrible hunter, but I actually went hunting with the guys. There was a group of guys called the Paint Daubers. They would meet every Thursday morning for breakfast. And so for a long time, I just went and met with these old men for breakfast, just to connect with them, to join in with them. And when they realized that I was one of them, it took a few years, but once I became one of them, then I really became one of them. I still am one of them, even though I live in South Carolina now. When I come back, that's what it is. So, okay, here's what I want you to do. This article kind of talks about it too, but this is what I want you to do. I want you to map a congregational family system. And there'll be 2 parts to this assignment. Number 1 is I want you to draw a map of a church that you are involved in or have been involved in, or if you don't want to do a church, you can do a ministry like a youth ministry. You'll just have to reinterpret this to fit for your specific ministry. All right. And so I want you to think about the family systems and the way people relate to each other and the way they spend their energy and where their energy goes. Maybe where are the areas of conflict and where are the areas of agreement and harmony, and how does that work? Where's the focus? And you draw a map about what that looks like. Think about all the different groups in the church and where they all fit together, okay? And then the second thing is draw another map thinking of your church in the larger community in that system. So how does the church fit into the larger community system? Now, if you do, say, a youth group, you have to think about that. How does our youth group fit into the larger community system? And maybe you could say, how does our youth group fit into the church at large, maybe? I would like to think, though, beyond the doors of the church for the second map. I'm thinking about the actual community in which your church is located. One of the big questions is, if your church disappeared, would anybody notice? Who would notice, and why would they notice? And I have a hunch there are going to be a lot of churches disappearing after what we've been through these last couple of weeks and what's going to be happening in the weeks and months to come. Well, I drew a map so I can show you what I'm looking for. And what I want you to do is to draw a map like this, and then do a video, or you can do it in writing. You can write it on paper if you want. Video would be a lot more fun. Download it, make sure it's set on a public setting, and download it to Canvas so we can all see it. I'll post this as a discussion forum, so you can post on that. And if you have a chance, see each other's comment on it, that'd be kind of fun. All right, so here you go. I don't know if you can see this or not. You see it? I don't know if you can. Well, let's see here. All right. So, oh, I know. Here's what I'll do. I'm going to get out of SlideShare for a minute. This will make it a lot better. Hey, now we're in business. There it is. Okay. This is my map. Okay. Now you want to make sure you put yourself in there. That's me right here. And if you notice, the energy is pointing outward. Yeah. Yeah. The energy is pointing outward, because like I'm this outreach focused kind of guy. I mean, that's really my thing. Like our church exists to reach lost, broken, hurting people, and we got to go do that. We got to go love our neighbors and bless the nations, and I think that's really important. H2N2, right? It's hope and holiness for the nations. Okay, anyway, so it's all outreach. And then like Kathy and I started Celebrate Recovery, and that was really an outreach thing. I started a youth group. I did it myself, starting at first. There were some people that didn't like that idea that their pastor was hanging out with youth group kids. But that youth group ended up growing and really great things happening. And now, they have full-time youth pastor and all that, junior high and everything. And then the mission committee, they were with me too. Man, they were really excited. We started a team that just started doing all kinds of international stuff, and we ended up raising like thousands and thousands of dollars to send away to missions, hundreds of thousands. And then the people, this is like the bulk of the congregation. They were like with me. They had the same heartbeat. And then I had this other little group over here. I call them the H8, the Holy Huddle group. The Holy Huddle people, they were big on discipleship. They really liked discipleship a lot, but they weren't so good on outreach and evangelism. They wanted to go deep. Let's go deep. Let's go deep, deep, deep. It wasn't really deep. It was just muddy, is what it was. And so like they just had such a shriveled, narrow view of discipleship that it became kind of dysfunctional. It was very difficult. Fortunately, I never could quite get over that one. I didn't. what happened was those guys were still there when, when I left the church, but my predecessor, or the guy after me, who came in, Chad, you saw his video. He saw that in a heartbeat and took care of that immediately. And so that was a smart move on his part. Those guys aren't on in leadership positions anymore, and that was a good and wise thing. So anyway, and because here's the reason why, like, this is our church and our community. Wasn't that beautiful artwork right there? So basically what happened was, I mean, we started small. We started just like the Ken and Callahan talked about, with one thing, and it was mission. And then we said, how can we do that? How can we do that? So we went to different places, like to the superintendent of schools and to social services. And what do you need? How can we help you? And we started finding needs and filling them, and finding hurts and healing them. And so like what we ended up doing was like just reaching out to all the different areas of the community. LCO, that's Native American reservation, the school systems, we sent in tutors and stuff into the schools, the hospital, nursing homes, did chapels and stuff for nursing homes, and started visiting the sick and anybody that needed somebody. And business leaders, we developed business stuff, like helping business leaders get going on things. And government, we had our people that started getting involved in every layer of the government, not only in the city and the county, but even in the state of Wisconsin. And community civic groups like the Boy Scouts used our facility, and the hunter safety and reading programs and food distribution and all of that kind of stuff. Our building itself became like the community center for the entire community. The Ministers Association, sort of. Like when I first came to town, and it was okay until our church started growing, and then there were people that were upset. And when that happened, it messed a few pastors up just a little bit to see our church grow when theirs wasn't. And so like there were a few, like the MS, that's Missouri Synod, and First Lutheran, and then the Congregationalists, and all three of those guys, they didn't like me too much. But the others were good. The others were good people. Anyway, that's my map. So, okay, I think my neighbor's cutting his lawn, so I think that's time for me to quit yakking and call this a day. So I want you to make a map like that with a church or a ministry. Do one for your church specifically within the relationships within the church. And then the second one is a map of your church or your ministry in relationship to the whole community. What does that look like? All right. So that's what I want you to do. And then if you can figure it out, post it on a video on the discussion forum assignment that I'll put up. And then, and if you can't figure out a video, then post it as like a paper. All right, you can write it that way, but video is a lot more fun. That's what I'd hope. It doesn't have to be long. Just kind of what I did, just a few minutes, a couple minutes, and it'll be great. So yeah, comment on a couple of people's videos too. Can you do that? That would be awesome. Look forward to seeing your stuff. Everything will be due on Saturday, both the posting and the couple of comments. All right. God bless you guys. You have a good one. Talk to you later. Bye.